Welcome to Ion Connecticut. I'm your host, Mike Savino, and today we're looking at inequality in terms of candidates who are running for office. So you just heard in part one of our episode today from Suzette DeBeetham Brown, the mayor of Bloomfield, about her experiences running for office as a Black woman. But we're also going to be looking at the situation statewide, look at maybe some of the efforts that are being done to bring a little more balance, a little more representation. And to do that, we're talking with Connecticut Conference of Municipalities Executive Director Joe DeLong. Joe, thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be on, Mike. Thanks for having me.
And CCM is doing some stuff with Yale to get people to run for office, get more diverse candidates running for office. But before we get into that, Joe, just more broadly, I mean, we heard Suzette's experience running for office. What are we seeing statewide? Obviously, that's just her experience in one town.
Well, one of the things that really occurred to me going back 3, 4 years ago is CCM would be engaged in some, fairly important public policy discussions where we were wanting to do some type of advertising or media exposure on our positions. And, one of the things that our experts would come to us and say is, hey, make sure that in our commercials and the things that we film with our municipal officials, with our municipal CEOs, make sure that we have the appropriate diversity and balance, that speaks to the residents of Connecticut. And I would look around the room and say, we don't have any. I mean, this is really awful in many ways. We have some incredible elected officials at the local level, but when it came to culturally and the diversity and the equity-based issues, our municipal leadership across the state did not pair up or reflect the diversity of the constituencies in which we serve. So, this is something that I think has been important for quite a long period of time. And we've been doing a lot in this equity space within the last several months. But I hope that we are certainly committed to doing that going forward, because one of the things, Mike, that I've always said, and I truly believe, is that the economy and local government have one thing that's really very much in common, and that is that they both do their best when everybody is involved and everybody has access. We know coming out of the pandemic, if we want our economy to grow, everybody has to be involved in the economy. They all have to have access to that growth. That's something that a lot of people are studying and working on right now. Government is no different. If we want our government to work, everyone has to have access and everyone has to have representation, and everyone must be able to participate that wants to participate. And that's why I think this work is so important.
And I'm glad you started out with that, because I did want to ask you about that too, because it's been such a strong, I don't know if pivot's the right word, but a strong change. I mean, CCM for years has been focused, when you think of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, which represents all of the municipalities around the state, they've been focused on issues like property tax reform, mandate relief, things that affect all towns equally. Not that social justice and racial diversity don't affect them, but it really wasn't a realm that CCM got into. So it was even becoming an issue for you in terms of, your outreach and marketing. Did it also affect the issues that CCM was talking about?
Yeah, I think it certainly affects the issues. And look, one of the things that attracted me to come to CCM from out of state was the fact that this was an organization that had incredible stability. It had been around almost 50 years. It had two executive directors who had both done outstanding work. But the second executive director came up under the first. And like I said, no disrespect to them. I came inherited a wonderful organization that had been very well run, but it also, did things the way that it did them because it always did them that way. And it really gave us an opportunity to take a step back and really eliminate that mantra of, well, we've always done it this way, so this is what we always have to do. Connecticut is the land of steady habits, as you know. And so it's very easy for an association like mine to fall right into that land of steady habits mindset. But we don't go anywhere when we do that. If we don't evolve, we die. We die economically, we die socially, we get left behind, and we don't want to see the state get left behind. I want to see a state that I'm raising two young daughters in I want to see hope and opportunity. And I try to lead this organization with the vision of the state that I want them to inherit one day as tax-paying adults who are participating in the economy. And this work is vitally important in that regard. And it's also, it would be really nice for our children to inherit something from us that they already know and understand better than we do anyway. My kids who participate in sports and all other kinds of activities, they don't see racism for their eyes. They don't see lack of opportunity for others, or believing that they have some type of privilege that others, should not have. So generations prior to mine, Mike, and maybe my generation as well, have continued to perpetuate something that simply should not be. And if our children are smart enough to understand that it should not be that way, then we should be committed to making sure that they don't inherit a state that continues to go down a failed path.
And what is, how would you describe the representation in Connecticut? Obviously, you talked about what you're seeing at CCM and, the representation, the diversity among local leaders who serve with CCM. But what are we seeing more broadly? I mean, we do have Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, some areas that are majority minority, although even there, the mayors are white. But aside from that, I mean, what are we seeing? Are we seeing diversity? It's just not getting to CCM, or is it right from the bottom that it's a difficulty for minorities?
No, we are a very, very segregated state, and we are a segregated state by design. And maybe not by design of people today. That's part of the challenge with this work. Is someone will say, well, if I wouldn't recommit the sins of the past, I therefore am not part of the problem. Now, the sins of the past have created an environment that was done intentionally, and it was done intentionally through public policy. And just saying that we would not do those policies anymore is not enough. What we have to do is intentionally act to undo the damage in which they have done. And a lot of this goes back to the areas of housing, how back in the 1930s and, during a time when the FHA first started creating housing loans for people coming out of the Great Depression and only offered them to white people. Took a segment of society and essentially by policy. A lot of people don't really understand this history, but by direct intentional public policy, we created what is known as the modern day ghetto. That was done intentionally. Most people don't understand that. And so you jump forward all of these other years and you have a certain segment of society that really through home ownership was given the opportunity to advance itself and to create wealth. And another segment of society that was held down by never being given that opportunity at that time. And so what it led to is tremendous segregation within the state, number one. And that segregation is not just within housing, but also tremendous inequities as it applies to public education, which continues to perpetuate that problem. So now if I'm a young person of color and I am born into a situation with very little opportunity that was intentionally created for me that way, well, at least in America, this land of dreams and everybody should have opportunity, I should be able to pull myself up out of that. That's what someone would say who doesn't think that any work needs to be done here. We're not holding you down anymore. You can pull yourself up out of it. You can work hard, go to school, do the right things, and have the same opportunity as everybody else. But the reality is, because of the system that we've created, where they can work hard and where they can go to school and the tools and the resources in which people are given in some of these communities are vastly different than what those who were not born or not put in those situations are given. So that's something that I think that we have to grapple with and to understand, is that the challenges that we have from an equity standpoint as a society were intentionally created through public policy. And so the only way to undo some of those challenges is to figure out how we intentionally make things better through public policy to more even the playing field.
One of the things that CCM is doing intentionally is you've partnered with Yale to recruit people of color to run for office. Talk to me a little bit more about this. What does that mean? What are you doing besides just saying, hey, you should run for office? What are some of the things you're doing to help them?
Well, it was really a two-part training. And let me say, first of all, I was incredibly encouraged by it because we had, both days over 250 people register. And that's 250 people from a select group, from a group of minorities. That's a pretty strong registration of people saying, yeah, I have interest. I'd like to get involved. I'd like to make things better. And the way we structured the 2-day training was day one with Yale and their campaign school, which is a nationally renowned campaign school, was focused on giving people of color the information and the tools that they needed to run successful campaigns. It was really built upon, okay, if you want to run for office, here's what you need to do to win. And then day two of the training was something we see a lot at CCM, not just with people of color, but with everybody, is people will run for office, win, and get into office and not know exactly what they need to do in order to be successful. And so day two was built around, okay, now you've had the foundation of what you need to do to be successful to win. Here's what you need to do to be successful and understand how to govern. And again, not only do we have a ton of people in Connecticut participate, and this is the only place we advertised this was in Connecticut, but we actually had participants as far away as Dallas, Texas, go through this program. And so for the first year, we thought it was very, very successful. We ended up with almost 100 people in Connecticut who graduated, being that they completed the full day of the first day and the full day of day two. So they gave up 2 Saturdays over a 3-week span. And the feedback that we've gotten on the surveys afterward was it's just been phenomenal. People saying that it was an incredible training. They learned a ton. They were inspired to run or to get involved. If it's not to run, to get involved on a local board or a local commission. And that's really what we were looking for, is just public engagement, making sure that everybody's voice is heard and that everybody has access to be a part of the decisions that are made that impact their communities and their environments going forward.
And talk to me a little bit more about, why CCM felt that this program was needed, what you're hearing from some of the people who went through this school. I mean, you certainly just talked about, a couple of minutes ago about, in general, the segregation in our society, the difficulties of, for example, becoming a doctor because you can't get the education, you can't get on the path that somebody from a suburban school can get to become a doctor, for example. But when you're talking about politics, obviously you don't need any level of education. Especially at the local level, you really want people who know the community. Not that you're okay with dummies running for office, but you want people who know the community, who are committed and love the community. So what are you hearing from people of color that say something like this is really needed to get them to think about running, to feel comfortable getting into politics?
Well, I think one of the things that really worked out with this training that we heard maybe a lot after the training and not as much before was hope and inspiration. We brought in and had just at the state level, just at the Connecticut level, we had people like State Treasurer Sean Wooten talk to him, who, Sean came from very humble, difficult beginnings to get to where he is. We had Governor Lamont's chief of staff, Paul Mounds, who is a black man, help present. You talked about the great work that Suzette DeBeath Brown has done in Bloomfield. She's an outstanding mayor and has been an incredible contributor to the work that we're trying to do here. And so on top of the lessons learned and how to be successful, a lot of this was just people who haven't maybe thought, yeah, I would love to do this, but this isn't right for me. Like it's not open. This door's not open to me. I'm not rich. I don't come from a political family. I don't have a bunch of resources that I can draw from to run for office. And it was really getting people who come from similar circumstances that look like them, whether we like it or not, we're all more comfortable within an environment of people who come from similar backgrounds, similar cultures. It always amazes me when we have things like race equity discussions about challenges for people of color and everybody around the table is white. It's like, okay, do we really do I really understand this? I mean, it's not, you have to be able to walk a mile in somebody's shoes. And so I think that's one of the things that was really beneficial in this training that we saw from people was they needed someone to assure them that, yes, this is for you. And you are not only welcome, but you are desperately needed. And so we're not just saying, yeah, if you want to come in, the door's open. One of the things that we talked about them was don't worry about coming in and should I raise your hand? Raise both hands. And you don't have to knock on the door. You just open it up and come in. This is your government, your community, it's your future, the future of your children. And I think and I hope that what a lot of our participants in this program learned was there are people who have walked this path very successfully before you, and they're here to help you walk it. Like they want to help you walk this path if you're wanting to walk it too. And I think that was one of the most important things that some of the participants in this program learned was that you're not alone, and you can be successful. There have been others that have certainly paved the way and continue to pave the way.
Local elections are every 2 years. Obviously, there's going to be a need to continue to get more candidates. Some will win, some will lose, some will decide after a term or two that, maybe this isn't for me. How often are you planning to do this? And I guess long term, how are you going to be evaluating if it's successful?
Yeah, well, it's a great question you asked because first of all, we plan to continue to do it and to do it annually. We are meeting as a staff, trying to analyze whether we want to adjust the program to where the program lines up with the elections that are taking place that year. So, maybe if we do one, when we do one next year, maybe it'll be more geared toward running for state legislative offices simply because that's the election that's taking place, and then going back and doing the municipal training one, the year after that. So we plan to do it annually. Certainly, we may make some modifications based off of what type of election is being held in that particular year. And as far as how do you gauge success, one of the things that we talked about as a staff in our debrief the other day was that this was an amazing panel that presented on day two of Connecticut leaders. Like I'd mentioned the state treasurer and Paul Mounds, and we had Scott Jackson, who was a former mayor of Hamden, but also has held several state positions and financial positions in New Haven and other places. An incredible resume. Of course, Suzette DeBeetham Brown was on there. I think one of the ways that we gauge success is if when we're doing that panel in a couple years, that panel is made up of new success stories of people who have completed or graduates of this program. That's what we want to see. We want to see that next group of panelists coming from this group that went through the program and had the energy and were inspired to go out and make a difference. So that's one way that we're going to judge it, is tracking these people and helping them. We've had several people complete the program who have sent us emails saying, I just feel great knowing that I have a resource in CCM. If I have questions, if I need information, now all of a sudden I know who to turn to get the data and to get this information and get the things that can help form my own policy opinions on how I want to run for office and what I want to talk about. So I think that is one of the things that we're really going to be geared in on going forward, is an understanding that we don't want to, with great praise. I don't want to diminish this at all. With great praise to our panelists from this year, I don't want to have to rinse and repeat the same type of panelist every couple of years. I want to be growing those, helping grow those people or inspire those people to go out and to create their own success stories so they can come back and share them with the future generations of folks that want to go through this program.
And the first test of this program, just 8 months away, less than that now. When we get to local elections, we'll see how many of these candidates are decide to run and possibly win. Joe, thanks for joining me.
Mike, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.